Hey everybody, Pastor Zach here. Thanks so much for spending some time with me this morning as we delve into your discussions, your questions, whatever you want to speak about. That's what this time is for. From questions from serious to silly, it is your opportunity to spend some time with me and to have some questions answered. So feel free to drop them in the chat box as we have some discussion and engage in that conversation. Again, as always, if you have something that you would like to ask that you would rather message me directly, please feel free to do that as well, and we can have that conversation as well. It's always interesting, if any of you have ever done this, there's always sorts of little things that pop up and ways that, talks about bit rate and all of this stuff that there's crazy amounts of information that pull, that all pop up and, so it's, sorry if I'm a little off when I first begin, but this is your time. It's time for you to have some discussion with me and to interact and see where we go today. Sometimes it's having a focus, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we get in on something and through all of that, it leads to a further discussion and some interaction. So I invite you to spend some of that time with me and to see where we go. Thank you all so much for spending some time with me this morning and engaging in that conversation. So where do we go? What do we talk about this morning? And where do we interact? There's so much going on in the world and ways that we can engage and understand. I think it's important for us to have this time for conversation, and I hope that you see this time as that, as a time for conversation, as a time to interact, and as a time to post your questions. What I've been focusing on, or what I've been thinking about over the last few days is this past Sunday, we had this passage from Mark, and it talks about the disciples fighting over who is the greatest, and it talks about trying to figure out where it was in Mark just before that. This man brought his son. His son was having issues. He had asked the disciples to heal him, and they couldn't. And then Jesus comes and is able to do that, to heal the boy, to offer hope and healing. And then they leave that place. They move on, and Jesus asks them, what were you arguing about? Well, come to find out, they were arguing about who was the greatest of them, which I find really fascinating. They weren't able to do this. They weren't able to fulfill this healing, but then they're complaining and arguing with one another about who's the greatest. And what struck me about that was how often we do that. How often do we want to be the greatest? Do we fight to be the greatest? And not in always the best terms. There are people out there who train, who are very amazing at what they do, whether it's sports, whether it's leadership, whether they're leading their company, whatever it is that they are leading and engaging, that they train and they work really hard to accomplish whatever that is. But when we have these disciples, when we have these followers of Jesus who are trying to engage in who is the greatest of them, I find that really fascinating and really telling that, even the disciples, even those who struggled, had these questions, these interactions that we do as well. But what strikes me is if we go back to that understanding of the Father and Jesus talks about, the faith making the child well, and the father's comment was really profound, and I preached a lot on it on Sunday. And I encourage you to go back and pay attention. If you didn't watch, if you didn't participate in worship, and you just want to go back and view that. But the father says, "I believe, help my unbelief," and I find that really interesting, because this fact of I think it's twofold. First of all, he admits his belief. He admits his faith. I believe. I trust. But at the same time, he realizes this sense of humility and humbleness, where he cries out, help my unbelief, help me believe more deeply, more fully, help me to see what God sees, what Jesus sees. And I wonder, how often do we miss that opportunity to do that? How often are we so focused on us, on my wants, on me, that we miss that opportunity to go, help my unbelief, to see our limitations, to see our opportunities of growth, to say, you know what, this is where I stand, and I'm not moving, and whatever you say, you're not going to sway me. But to be open to hearing the other side, and maybe they don't change you, maybe, but hearing that man's profession really struck me this week. And I'd be curious to see if any of you had any thoughts about that, or is there something specific that speaks to you from that gentleman's comments, from that gentleman's expectations? What does that look like for you, and how do you hear that passage, hear that father's response, that I believe, help my unbelief? And I think we so often label stuff, label people, label groups so quickly that we don't take the time. And it's hardwired into our DNA. It's hardwired into our brain, actually. That's how our brain works. It computes stuff, and it allows us to save time, to make quick decisions by being able to go, oh, well, we've had this experience, or we've learned this, and so all of these situations. It takes much more time to be able to step back and to hear differently, and to listen and let that digest, and think on that before we respond. How often, and I do it too, in some instances, and I work really hard not to, but how often do we immediately jump to someone, a response to someone after they say something? Well, we want to jump in and we want to respond, but how often do we just take that step back and think before we respond? And I think that's something that can be very powerful for us to remember and to engage with, and to sit in sometimes. There's countless times in the Bible where the people, or whatever is going on, there's this time of rest, there's this time of stepping back, there's this time of thinking, or there's this time of reaching out to a trusted confidant, from Moses to David, to even Jesus, that goes away to pray and uses that time as an opportunity to sort of be grounded again. And I think so often that we so quickly respond with emotion that we immediately, it's that knee-jerk response when the explanation or the way someone is talking is talking about their feelings and their, beliefs, and not trying to force them on you, but just trying to help you to understand. And yet we immediately, jump on this as this absolute I don't know, absolute personal attack. Well, you're saying this about me. Well, you know, I I'm not. Um, I found it interesting that this happened earlier. One of the bands that I really like, I planned to go see them in concert with my family. They ended up canceling their show in 2020, and then again postponed it. And you know, at the time, I said, hey, I appreciate you postponing it to just keep people safe because it was in the height of, the big flux last year. And someone posted today about that comment, um, totally not hearing my feelings, but took it as a personal affront that I'm not even sure. I don't want to speak for them, um, but the response was so confrontational and abrasive. There was name calling, and I'm going. I went back and I read my post. I'm like, what you're accusing me of, I didn't say. So there are times I think that we can speak to that, and there are times that I think we have to go, okay, if you can't take that opportunity as well, that faithful, breath, or that, whatever, how can we have that conversation? And I think we need to have some of those conversations. And I think that there are times when, yes, we need to stand up wholeheartedly and fight for what we believe in. But at the same time, that fight needs to be peaceful. It needs to be respectful. In that, if something is going on that you don't agree with, fine, disagree with it, but disagree with it respectfully. Why do you need to seek to degrade someone else? Um, Not on their merit, not on who they are, but because of your opinion of what they have decided or what they have done. It doesn't make them a bad person. It makes you not agree with their decision. So why attack their character if the purpose is to have a meaningful dialogue, and maybe it's not. Um, and so where do we go with all of this? And I think that's what I've been trying to wrap my head around is how can we get back to a sense of having conversation with one another and being willing to be in dialogue and disagree and debate and recognize that debate, that understanding may not come away with anyone changing their opinion, except the fact that we were able to have a discussion with one another without it turning to name calling and seeking to belittle someone else. And I think all of that comes back to that pronouncement of the Father, God, I believe, help my unbelief. And how do you see that in your life today and moving forward? Uh, how can you find the opportunity this day or this week to pray if you are so inclined, just that? Or, it takes all of 2 seconds. Um, and if you're not, is there something that someone could do to help Here last week, I had someone reach out that I knew from high school, who asked us to stop and pray for someone that she knew who was struggling with COVID. Um, you know, that that speaks, I think, to her desire to reach out, and to connect with a group, to connect with those of you who watched it later, those of you who are online with me at that point, um, and an opportunity to show compassion and to live into that compassion in this world. And I think that is something that is so vital for us to be able to do in our world today, um, and to have the opportunity to show that, whether it is in our faith or in, life anew, but finding ways to re-engage differently, I think is so important for all of us, and to have those opportunities. And I hope you do that. I hope where and however this finds you this week, that you were able to engage in some of that, to take a second to offer up that prayer, to find new ways to live into your faith or your understanding, whatever that may be. Also know that I'm always here. Jody, I did not forget about you. I'm trying to figure out about some opportunities for those books, or if you want to pick my brain and heart, we can figure a time to do that. So thank you all so much for spending some time with me this morning. Feel free to leave your comments or your questions below if I didn't get to them, or if you watch this later, and I will do my best to get back to them. Also, thanks so much for checking this out, and if you know someone who might appreciate this, or if you find that it's helped you and want to share it, please do that so we can enlarge our group to continue this discussion. Thank you all so much. I had a great time with you today. Hope you have a blessed day wherever you are and are able to engage more fully. And I invite you, pray with me here, but also take it with you. God, I believe. Help my unbelief. Amen. Have a great day, everybody. God bless.